Hello, everyone, and welcome to my review for the film Avengers Infinity War. This movie is, of course, directed by the Russo brothers, who also directed the film Captain America Civil War, which happens to be one of my favorite films of all time. And this is part of course, the Marvel Cinematic Universe. This is going to be one of my most difficult films to review. There's so much to talk about, so a couple things in advance. First of all, this movie review is going to be completely spoiler filled. Okay, so if you have not seen the film yet, do not watch this video because I will be going in depth and in detail about many of the spoilers in this film. So I highly suggest not watching this video if you have not seen the film yet. And the other thing is, I'm going to keep this review completely uncut because my commitment is to get you guys the most honest reviews that I can. And for a film of this size and this scale, there's going to be a lot to talk about, and I want to keep this completely uncut. The third thing is that I have my notes open on my laptop here, so if my gaze shifts, is because I'm looking at my notes. I want to keep a structured review and talk to you guys about all the things that I really want to talk about in this film. So to begin this discussion, let's just start by talking about my background, my experience with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and my expectations going into Avengers: Infinity War, because I think that is really an important part of the conversation about this film. So for me personally, I have been such a huge fan, as many of you have been as well, of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. This is a franchise I've literally grown up with. I've seen a majority of the films in theaters, especially the recent ones, that I can remember in recent memory. And I've loved literally each and every one of them. I mean, even when we talk about the ones that are not as good, like Thor: The Dark World, I literally came out of that movie also having enjoyed that. Now, of course, there have been movies I've enjoyed more than others. As I said, Captain America Civil War really is just a phenomenal film for me. That movie does so many great things for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's just easily one of my favorite Marvel films of all time. And in advance, I'll let you know that that movie still, for me, is better than Avengers: Infinity War. So my expectations going in to see Avengers: Infinity War obviously were sky high. I mean, this is a movie I've waited my entire life to see, as many of you also have waited your entire life to see. So, my expectations were definitely extremely high. And we'll get into the actual, review of the movie later. My experience with watching this movie was so awesome as well. I got an awesome crowd to watch the movie with. I saw it opening weekend, saw it on the big IMAX screen. As many of you may or may not know, this is actually the first Hollywood film to be shot entirely with IMAX cameras. Not even Christopher Nolan did this. He did, similar things with Dunkirk and Dark Knight Rises and all those kind of films, and used a lot of IMAX cameras, but to be shot entirely with the IMAX cameras, Marvel is the first one to do it with this film, Avengers: Infinity War. So, kind of with my experience and expectations out of the way, let's talk a little bit about this movie in general. First of all, my kind of initial thoughts on this movie were that we have to remember when we talk about this movie that this is really an episodical kind of a franchise. This is something that Marvel has built over time. It's a cinematic universe. So while Avengers: Infinity War is basically its own individual film, we also have to keep in context that this is a film that is part of a much larger franchise. Now, when we talk about, the Marvel Cinematic Universe as a whole, and especially in context of Avengers: Infinity War, it's really not a criticism to me that this movie is, part of a franchise. I think that what Marvel has done within the cinema world and within the world of film is something truly experimental. It's never been done before. I mean, this sort of movie is so risky to create because it's literally never ever been done before. No one has ever tried to create a film of this magnitude, of this level, of the scale, with a buildup of like 18 to 20 movies and then creating a movie with all those characters all in one. That's something that's never been done before, and I think that's something that we have to also keep in context while discussing this film. So a lot of the things that I'll be mentioning about this film may sound like criticisms, but honestly they aren't. I'm not saying they're criticisms or compliments towards the film necessarily. They're just facts about the movie that honestly couldn't have been changed due to the nature of what Marvel's trying to do with the cinematic universe. And one of those things is that the directors and writers of Avengers: Infinity War assume that you as an audience already are, first of all, familiar with the characters you'll be seeing in the film, and additionally have a strong emotional connection with them already set up before you even enter the film. So they don't do a lot in terms of the emotions with the characters in this film. There's everything that they have that is based on emotion for these characters is based on the assumption that you are already familiar and have a connection with these characters already. They aren't going to do a whole lot of basically character development in this film to kind of have you now form a connection to the characters. They're assuming you have this connection with these characters. Now, when it comes to the characters in Avengers Infinity War, there are a lot of them, as you might know already. So there's kind of a trade-off here. First thing is, well, obviously, as a fan and as a complete, Avengers Marvel nerd, you get to see all of these characters that you've seen in so many films before together, sharing the screen, whether it be, action sequences with them fighting, alongside each other, or whether it be, when they have those kind of joke, comedy, quip scenes. It's just something amazing to see that how they've been able to culminate so many characters and bring it up to this movie. So obviously on the scale level, they've done something phenomenal. That said, this is a difficult movie to write, and the movie does jump around quite a bit from character to character, location to location, often in the vein of sort of a comic book, which is what this is an adaptation of. Against the film medium, however, this sometimes comes off a bit, jumpy or disjointed. So I don't know. There's kind of a trade-off there where you get to see all of these characters, but you also have to deal with writing that isn't going to be exactly compact. There's going to be some loose ends in terms of writing. There's going to be some scenes that are going to be added that don't necessarily feel like they fit all the time. And I think that's because you really have to make this gargantuan blockbuster film with characters that have been set up from different films, and to bring it all together is no easy task. And one thing I will say about Russo brothers, the writers of Infinity War, the one thing that they've done incredibly well is the way in which they were able to do this, pull this off in general. I mean, I think that what they were able to do with Avengers Infinity War, they were able to do what was, I think, the best outcome. I think we all knew that Avengers Infinity War would not be perfect. It's too much of a crazy scale to really make a perfect movie out of. I was not expecting really a 5 out of 5 for this film. But with what the Marvel's trying to do by creating this cinematic universe and setting up these characters and bringing it to this sort of culmination, and the way they were able to pull it off with Avengers Infinity War is remarkable, really. And you can see not only that ambition and earnestness in this film, but also the execution, which is honestly quite phenomenal. It's not perfect, as I said, but I think with what they had, the resources, and what they were going for, they were really able to pull it off. Now, as I said, there's quite a number of characters, number of locations, and sometimes even a number of storylines, number of interpersonal relationships. It's quite a juggling act, and I think the writers and directors did the very best they could with this movie to make that juggling act as compact as is humanly possible. Now, guys, let's of course talk about the action set pieces in this movie. This movie is honestly 90% just action, straight up just superhero blockbuster action, which honestly I love because the action in this film is so incredible. The CGI is so well done in the movie. It flows seamlessly. All the action sequences are so enthralling. You get to see, as I said, the characters fighting alongside each other. Some of my favorite scenes, Captain America's entrance, Thor's entrance. There were some great entrance scenes in this movie. I mean, some of the great fight scenes in this film also. Any scene really with any superhero against Thanos. Those are my favorite scenes in this film. Just excellent action all the way through. Just phenomenal, in terms of action set pieces, what they're able to do. The Russo brothers had mentioned before that, if you like the airport scene, then Avengers Infinity War will be like 10 times the airport scene, and they really delivered on that end. The action scenes in this movie are really remarkable and very well done, very well choreographed as well. Now let's talk a little bit about the acting in this film. So many actors, like so many actors. So honestly, I'm not going to go through each and every actor and say, how their performance was, because at the end of the day, some of these characters also end up getting a bit more sidelined than others do. But honestly, I think everyone has at this point their favorite superheroes. For me, it's always been Captain America and Iron Man and Spider Man. These are kind of the crux of this film, and have been really for me for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. They've been my favorite superheroes. So in terms of acting, I always say those are my three favorite characters, and I think they're my three favorite actors who portray those characters. So I think that Robert Downey Jr., Chris Evans, and Tom Holland all gave excellent performances in this film. But there's one performance and one character that we have to talk about, of course, when we talk about Avengers Infinity War. And this performance, this character, this storyline, everything about, honestly, this character and the actor that plays this character is my favorite part of Infinity War. Yeah, I'm talking about Thanos. Amazing villain, guys. I mean, amongst all the heroes, action sequences, comedy, CGI, special effects, amongst all of that, the one thing that stood out to me from this movie, and is really kind of the bane of this movie, the crux of this movie, is Thanos. And Josh Brolin as Thanos is truly amazing. The relationship that Avengers Infinity War sets up for Thanos with Zoe Saldana's Gamora in this movie is phenomenal. I mean, I was truly shocked and amazed at the way they handled Gamora's death scene. That was something that was really affecting to me. Of course, this is one of those situations, again, where they expect you to have an emotional connection with these characters already. That was just an amazing scene for me. And what Josh Brolin and, I mean, in addition with the writers and the directors and everyone as I think a team effort, what they're able to do with Thanos as a character is phenomenal. We thought that Killmonger was a great villain, but Thanos is just off the charts amazing for me personally. I enjoy this character so much. A couple of things about Thanos. He is very physically menacing, and Josh Brolin really plays into that. He has this kind of, overall menacing stature, menacing nature, and that is easily one of the best parts of Infinity War. Is this guy is honestly really scary, and when there are action sequences with Thanos, you can literally, you feel that sense of power that he has against the Avengers, and you feel the sense of helplessness that the Avengers have against Thanos. Excellently executed throughout the film, this kind of powerful menace that Thanos brings to the film. Now, of course, the real deal about Thanos for me is kind of that emotional storyline that they set up for him, this kind of empathetic almost storyline that they set up for Thanos. It's truly amazing how they were able to create a villain that you honestly almost sometimes feel bad for. And I think a lot of that has to do with some of the great dialogue and some of the excellent writing that they do for Thanos in this movie. What he often says in the film is very subtle and very definitely makes a lot of sense to an audience member. And the way in which the dialogue is constructed is extremely well executed, and the messages come off extremely well without, there having to be an evil laugh and like kind of in the vein of what Justice League did. Because honestly, when I was watching this movie, a lot of what Thanos does in this film is kind of similar to what a lot of villains do, kind of his motivations, his intentions. But what Infinity War does differently is, thanks to the amazing performance of Josh Brolin, as well as some really subtle writing, Thanos comes off as not only this very powerfully menacing villain, but also a villain with a very emotional storyline, someone that you can really relate to in more ways than one. And I think that was honestly one of the strongest points, of Avengers Infinity War. So for me, Avengers Infinity War was just a great film. Again, as I said, it's not perfect. The movie does have that kind of disjointed feeling that some of the solo films, just solo films like, Iron Man or Thor Ragnarok or Spider-Man Homecoming or movies that we've seen in the past don't necessarily have. Even Captain America Civil War, I think the reason that is one of my favorite films is because that movie was able to pull off this perfect balance. And I think Avengers Infinity War has some struggles pulling that off, but with considering the number of actors and the ambition of this film, they really do the best that they do the very best that they can. So for me, Avengers Infinity War was everything I wanted. Despite the extremely long runtime, I was constantly engaged in this film, thanks to an excellent villain, some great actors, and phenomenal action sequences. Now let's talk about that ending. That ending was so sad and so shocking, I think, to everyone in the audience. I personally did not really see it coming. It was honestly shocking, and we can talk in this video about lots of theories and what I think and all that. But it is one of those endings where it's a cliffhanger, and so it's a setup ending because now you want to go see the next movie. So for me, it is one of those kind of facets of this film where you kind of realize that this is a film that's part of a larger franchise. It's a piece in a larger puzzle. Um, so I'm interested, of course, to see what goes next in this kind of universe um, in terms of a franchise. Now, as a film, of course, I've kind of laid out my review already, but I think ultimately a lot of the criticism and debate over Infinity War and some of the divisiveness that has also come out is due to a lot of people not being able to register what Marvel is doing. And I know a lot of different people have different opinions about it because what they're really doing is creating an extended franchise. And people often forget that, while Infinity War is a movie just by itself, it is part of a larger franchise, and that is Marvel's intention. Now, is that a good thing or bad thing for the film world in general? I think that's a debate for another day, but I think whenever we discuss this film, I think there's always going to be a discussion of movies in the past and movies that come in the future. So overall, I really enjoyed Avengers Infinity War. It was everything I ever wanted to see on the big screen with all these awesome heroes, great action sequences, a phenomenal villain. Honestly, one of the best parts of Avengers Infinity War is this phenomenal villain. I had a blast watching this movie. I'm going to give Avengers Infinity War a B+. Really, it's kind of hard to review this movie, as I said earlier, but I think B+ kind of is an encompassing grade of some of the faults and good attributes of this movie. And overall, I enjoy this movie. Of course, going to see it again, and it's possible my opinions may change over time, but for now, I'm at a B+, and I enjoyed this film. So thank you so much for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed that review of Avengers Infinity War. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, do all those great things, and I'll see you guys in a different review.